And out of this, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington this morning. He's set to meet with President Trump at the White House later today. Now, their meeting comes as Israel and Hamas are set to hold a second day of indirect talks in Qatar amid efforts to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza. Over the weekend, President Trump expressed optimism that a deal could be reached this week.
I think there's a good chance we have a deal with Hamas during the coming week, pertaining to quite a few of the hostages.
For more on this, we're joined in studio by CBS News Middle East reporter Courtney Kealy. Courtney, good morning to you. Great to have you back. Why do we think President Trump is so optimistic? I think currently they are just waiting for Hamas to respond to terms that the U.S. and Israel have already agreed to. Fact check me on that.
Well, the ceasefire looks like the ceasefire that broke before. President Trump, I think, is optimistic because of what he's claiming is a complete victory in Iran with those U.S. airstrikes, and then a subsequent peace deal. Iran really went to a ceasefire very quickly. Not really a peace deal, but a ceasefire. So the ceasefire in Iran, the lifting of American sanctions in Syria, he sees it as a bigger part. He sees Saudi Arabia eventually as part of the deal and back to the Abraham Accords. But right now, digging deeper into what's happening between the Israelis and the Palestinians, with Hamas at the table, this is the first time, according to Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, that Hamas is dealing directly in negotiations in history with the U.S. And what they're looking at right now is, out of 28 Israeli hostages, releasing 10 that are living and the rest that are deceased. They would be looking at reestablishing aid into this beleaguered territory, changing maybe aid trucks getting in, a ceasefire to lead to a better deal. So he's very optimistic. Third visit by Netanyahu to the White House. The last two were big. The first was the mention of the Gaza Riviera. The second was the mention of Iranian nuclear talks, U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. And now we'll have to wait and see what the big news is, if there is.
And, I mean, domestically for Netanyahu, not everyone in his government has been supporting him. He has been politically fragile for a while, and we've been watching these aid deliveries in Gaza turn deadly. So how does that impact the calculation for him to get something done?
Politically, Prime Minister Netanyahu is riding a wave of positive ratings right now post-Iran. But that's going to be short-lived. And even at the cabinet meeting before he left for the U.S., there was a big infighting between the head of the IDF, Lieutenant General, Chief of Staff of the IDF, and his right-wing, far-right coalition. So does he keep a hold of that coalition? Does he defer to something else? Do they go to elections after this? He's positioning himself in a way while there's also still great discontent among the Israeli people for what's happening in Gaza. And then you get to that American aid group that's overseeing this aid, and they're saying, according to the UN, that there have been mass casualty events every day in the last several weeks. People being fired on with live fire while trying to get aid, while the number of malnourished people rises, where you see these starving babies coming out of Gaza. Nobody wants to see that, but this group doesn't have experience delivering aid. The UN does, and the UN is crying out for, and sending many missives out saying we need to be in there too. Maybe the ceasefire could change that on the ground.
Yeah, heartbreaking to see all that unfold. Let's hope something can be done. Courtney Kealy, great to have you here.